Could I also get the morning after pill?
Hey, Nick, do we sell the morning after pill?
Oh, that's okay. We don't need to bother Nick. He's doing pill business.
You know, Shrill's so personal, the book, and it's just about my life. And I don't think that anyone, unless you're a really weirdo narcissist, thinks my life is fascinating and should be made into a TV show. You know, it just doesn't, because your life is just your life. When people wanted to option the book and start talking about making it into a TV show. And then I started to sit down and think about, you know, what elements of this story would translate to TV. It was really, all of a sudden, really inspiring. And I started to think of all the stuff in the book that I hadn't seen on TV and that really would have meant a lot to me to see presented, you know, in that format to such a big audience. You know, I a lot of the book is about not seeing myself represented growing up and wanting to remedy that. And I've always been obsessed with television. And if, you know, it was one thing to do that in a book, which reaches a certain audience, but to get to do it in another medium that reaches a lot more people potentially was really exciting. The sex scene, I think you really don't see that. You know, you don't see... you know, obviously her relationship is problematic in certain ways, but they are connected. And like, they're not having bad sex. They're not having awkward, uncomfortable, embarrassed sex. Like she has a little nod to her self-consciousness, but for the most part, like, she's connected to him in this moment. And that's part of real life. You know, a big thing that Adie and I talked about all the time when we were developing the show is we don't walk through the world every day like fat. Like, you're not living as a fat woman. You're just living your life most of the time, trying to deal with all the problems that everyone else has and all the beautiful things about life that everyone else gets to experience. So we wanted to present the fullness of that life and the reality of it. And with the abortion, again, you know, I mean, I had an abortion and I have written about it a lot. And the reason that I write about it is because we don't talk about it. And because we don't talk about it, the only people talking about it are people who are trying to stop people from having abortions. And so, or at least stop people from having safe, legal abortions. And so it's, it really, really meant a lot to me to get to not just put the abortion in the show and present it not as this huge trauma in her life, but as a part of her life, as an important decision that she's making as a fully actualized adult woman who's in the driver's seat of her own life. But it's also something that ties into her body. Like, the reason that she gets pregnant is because she doesn't feel enough self-worth to set boundaries with Ryan. And she gets herself into the situation because she is sort of letting him control the relationship, and she doesn't feel like she has a leg to stand on to say, no, I have equal power in this relationship. The writer's room is, I mean, it's all people bringing their own experiences to the show. Like, it was important to me to have multiple fat writers on the show. Besides me and Adie, also Samantha Irby, who's incredible. And like, sometimes the writer's room was just devolved into Sam telling these stories of brutality that, you know, some of the other writers who aren't fat and who aren't treated like trash every day of their life couldn't believe that these stories were true. And to the point where there was a lot of stuff that we couldn't put in the show because it was too brutal and like too dark, but totally real. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of our real lives in the show, and not, you know, that's why it's not, when I say Annie's not me and, you know, Gabe isn't Dan Savage, even though obviously the framework comes from the book and comes from my experiences, all these characters are built from all of us. And also, you know, the actors put a ton of themselves into it. And, but yeah, the writer's room was fun and sad. And it was kind of fun to like scandalize the
normies.
Yeah, exactly. Especially like the relationship stuff with the fat women in the room talking about how we had been treated by men. The straight dudes in the room could not believe it. I think some parts of this reality are totally unfathomable to people. Like, people don't know what this life is like. And like, it really, you know, Ryan is an amalgam of all the worst men that the women in the writers' room have ever dated, and it was an interesting process putting that character together, and like very devastating.
Hey,
Hey.
I just wanted to let you know that your article was very good.
This is the best conversation we've ever had.
Could I borrow $5?
Sure.
I mean $20.